The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Tony D'Angelo's PM Coast to Coast. Now, here's your host, Tony D'Angelo.
And a very, 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 very good afternoon to all of you, and Mike Du Bois for the intro. My name is Tony D'Angelo. I am the host of Comfortably Zoned Radio's Tony D'Angelo PM Coast to Coast. This is the Speaking of Everything edition. And today I've got a really special guest. The great part about getting older is you meet a lot of people along the way, some great, some wonderful, some good, some not so good, and you try to learn something from every single person that you learn. Why I've learned so much from this man. He has been a friend for some time. We come from the same town, Stamford, Connecticut. We graduated high school the same year, different schools, and we have a lot of common experience. The most common experience that we have is the illness that we will talk about, the condition, epilepsy. My father was epileptic, and when I knew about this gentleman, Bobby Fiore, we started to have a dialogue, and frankly, for a number of years, we haven't stopped. Bobby is just an inspiration. He is a wonderful guy, and he is an encyclopedia of how to get it done when you don't have anything to do it with, and ultimately an inspiration. Bob, good afternoon. How are you, my friend?
Good afternoon. We're doing great, thank you.
It's always great to have you. So I've got a Martian next door neighbor, and I'm bringing you over today to introduce you. And what do I tell him as to who you are, what you represent, and what you stand for, and what is your mission in life?
Well, the mission here is to help people living with epilepsy. The Connecticut Epilepsy Advocate is based in Milford, Connecticut, and we proudly serve the entire state. But trust me, if there's anyone in any part of America that needs help and they wish to contact us, we do have contacts in almost every state.
Now, you have a particular story about yourself and how you have been afflicted and what you have done in terms of your own development, the development of others, and providing resources and advocacy and a better way to travel. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So basically, I've had epilepsy since birth, and it was discovered when I was 9 years old. And as much as all the doctors and research tried to do decades ago, it was semi-helpful, but it's not as what's available today. And we try to make that available to people, again, throughout the state and on a national basis too, when possible.
And you were moved because of the fact of what you had seen through quote-unquote bureaucratic processes where you and I kind of locked together, because I was similar, in my own trade or profession, to take what you understood to be a better way and actually do it yourself. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Sadly, with so many nonprofit offices, they'll have a national office and a state office, and their basic idea is to make a donation. Then you wonder where the heck the money goes in after all these donations come in. How do they run their office? Do they have a multitude of staff? And it's sad how they're run. Connecticut Epilepsy Advocate, myself and 2 other board members. Tony teases me, well, you're virtually a one-man show, which is very flattering. But no one here gets paid. We work out of our office from home, and we just watch every penny that we bring in and don't waste the money. We spend more time helping people living with epilepsy. And if I have to drive to a different part of the state or do a conference call like we recently did, there's a young woman at a local college that was having an issue with one of the teachers. The rest of the staff understood she suffers from epilepsy. She does her homework. She goes to every class class she could, but after a seizure, she just can't go to the class.
Sure, it's hard to recover.
Yep. So this teacher couldn't understand that. Frankly, he didn't want to understand that. So after doing the conference call with the staff there, they completely understood, and everything is settled down. And that's what we try to do.
Now, what I really want to bring out here is you went to a technical high school, J.M. Wright Tech in Stanford, and you worked in the plumbing industry and you worked in the hotel industry. You are not, by whatever you want to call it, manufacturer. You didn't start out by manufacturer to be, quote unquote, a nonprofit executive. You were a guy with a cause that's propounded this cause for many years, and I'd like to get your perceptions on that.
Well, it's true. I did go to Wright Tech to become a plumber, and years later, when jobs were becoming scarce, I was invited into the hospitality industry for over 7 years. But what got this nonprofit started is that I kept looking about what was going on with other nonprofits, and went to an event one day, didn't turn out too good. I came home, told my wife what was going on, and out of nowhere she goes, "Why don't you start your own organization?" And I'm like, "You serious?" She goes, "Sure. You know what to do." And that was in 2009. Actually, in 9 months from now, November 11th, we'll be in our 10th year.
It's just such a great, there's so many people that sit around and I cannot do by reason of A, B, C, D, E, F, or G. And you've given this example to say this is what you can do. And where I want to get to the cost of prescription medication, which of course is a huge global issue, I just would like you to tell to our audience near and far as to this example of advocacy that you brought on a shoestring to the Connecticut State Legislature. House Bill 5450 concerning the palliative use of marijuana for children, and what you did and what happened and how you did it, and just to kind of give us a guideline as to how this is done.
Sure. Well, first off, it's the palliative use of medical marijuana for children.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something, this started with a show I saw on CNN over 5 years ago. And after seeing that and talking to other professionals and friends, we should make this a bill. The first year, I wasn't too used to doing this, so the first year of submission, it was too late. The second year went in, and other people copied our bill, and it just fell by the wayside. So, of course, as that old line is, third time is a charm, and luckily, with all the media friends I have here in Connecticut, one of them did a feature story in November of 2015, and that really got the ball rolling. So we pushed for this very hard, and sure enough, we were told, "Why don't you come up to the Capitol and speak to the co-chairs of the Public Health Committee?" And we did that. And we pushed this like you can't believe, along with how many other people. I never worked so hard that I sent out over 750 emails from this office. And Tony can tell you, on the 3 Facebook pages we have, it was constantly being posted, one thing after another. What the bill is, how to introduce it, how to submit your testimony, call your state rep, call your state senator. Whether they're on the board or not is irrelevant. They have to hear from their constituents in all of the 169 cities and towns in Connecticut. And again, luckily, it was on Friday, April 29th of 2016, the bill passed.
And it was just such a master work. And the fact that now you have done this, and the first thought I said is, well, Fiore can be a millionaire now because he understands how to do it and he understands where to go. And you just said, let this be a work for good. And that was just such a wonderful testimony to the work you had done.
Oh, thank you. And that was a local basis to help the people in Connecticut. But now my thing is on a national bill. And last year I sent in to Washington, D.C., that there is a ridiculous cost to prescriptions. It's irrelevant what medical condition you have. manufacturers of generic, and the formulary part of generic is not the same as the original brand. There's a multitude of fillers in there. So we feel, again, epilepsy or any medical condition, there has to be a cap on the cost of a prescription. So hypothetically, if your generic, the 3-year program is $10 or $15, but you need the specific brand, then fine. So you make it 20 or 25. But there's many policies that have a DAW, which means dispenses written fee, of $3,000 in the first month. And then after that, you have your deductible and your copay. So how is that fair to anyone? It's not. So we feel by introducing a national bill again this year, and we'll keep doing it until something happens. The only way it's going to happen or be brought to attention is by having this done. And I'm telling all of your listeners to please, on a national basis, contact your U.S. Senator, your U.S. House of Representatives, and explain to them what's needed. I was in a part of Connecticut, it's called East Haven, and our U.S. Senator Christopher Murphy was there, along with some other professionals. And they knew when they went in, they were going to just talk about things. And afterwards, it was only 5 people, I was the second of 5, to offer questions. After the questions, we asked if we could, wanted to speak to the people there afterwards. Well, luckily I spoke to one person, and what happened was while I was speaking to him, I turned around and said, let's speak to the other people. It was like watching a cartoon with Roadrunner. It was meet, and they were all gone. They left so fast, there was dust in the room. But the biggest thing I brought up was, besides the cost of medication, it's not fair what people go through just to get what they want. They kept harping on the formulary. So we asked 2 people if they could explain to the people what that is. They didn't answer the question. The pharmacist there that represented it, they couldn't answer. Again, the people were extremely friendly and professional, but why are you leaving the room? If you know you're going to be there in front of so many people, put time in your schedule.
Okay, now this whole concept of formularies, if you can, for the pea brains in the audience, and I've got both my hands up, and for several of the other pea brains, explain what that is, and did you feel that, whatever you want to call it, the Roadrunner Act, or the Off on the Pitch Act, was there some sort of, wink and a nod and let's disappear before we're held accountable issue on the part of the people you wanted to ask this question to?
Absolutely. I mean, they couldn't leave so fast. So as far as the formulary, an original prescription, this is the best description I can give you.
Sure.
Let's say it's 250 of A, 250 of B, and 500 of C. What they do with a generic is the same formula, then they put in a filler. There is no cap on the percentages of the filler. So what may work for an individual, let's say with 2%, 3%, 4% filler, is like this. If you took whatever aspirin for a general headache, it'll go away in 30 minutes. You take a generic, it might go away in an hour, hour and a half. When you're living with epilepsy or any other medical condition where it needs immediate attention, you can't be dependent upon that. Now, for the record, there's medications like phenobarbital. It's over 100 years old, and you cannot get the original prescription. However, phenobarbital is manufactured by over 100 different companies. However, because of the manufacturers that serve America, there's about 3 or 4. So I've been through this even recently, where they changed the manufacturer, and I had to go back and demand that I get the manufacturer I've been getting for the last 5 or 6 years. And luckily, they were kind enough to do that. But not in every case will that be honored.
Now, in your dealings with, and you don't have to name names, faces, or places if you do not want to, but in your dealings with people, elected officials in government, or perhaps more on a national level than a local level, depending on what state, depending on what person, do you find, have you found some people who are willing to root the thing out, root the formulary issue out, and bring it, let the chips fall where they may? Or is there, which I often think about, kind of a blue wall of silence with pharmaceuticals, because they are such profit-making enterprises, they are such taxpayers, they are such lobbyists, and the politicians, frankly, don't want to tick them off. I mean, I'm just curious to see what your perception of that is and what you've run into.
Well, let's take a step back. As far as the politicians don't want to tick them off, as much as I respect the drug companies have paid lobbyists. We don't. The general public doesn't have paid lobbyists.
Right.
By law, if you run a nonprofit, you cannot pay a lobbyist. And that's the beauty of what we did by just working from here with no paid lobbyists. But the thing is, when you're working on a national bill, and really and truly even a local one, it's not easy. So the numbers are against you.
And what are some of the things? I mean, I know we've got a lot of listeners here that are saying, hey, I like what I'm hearing. I've got a budget the size of 2 bags of shoestring potatoes. I've got a vision. I'd like to get something done. I'd like to get this thing moving, but I don't know how. I know no one. The only thing I've got is a bunch of spit and vinegar and desire. What are some of the things you personally have done to ring some very large bells?
The biggest thing that anyone could do across the country is Google and find their U.S. senator and U.S. state representative. And they have their contact information there. Call them, fax them. Wouldn't bother with those general emails because they just get put into the grinder and half of them don't even get read.
Oh, no, I've run into that. Yeah.
Exactly. But if you explain briefly who you are, what you need, what medication, and explain the cost is horrendous, the more people that do that, it's going to be amazing. I look at it this way. People complain about who gets elected, and we're not going to get in too deep with that. And they say your vote doesn't matter. It does. So, of course, if 100 people from every state started submitting how they feel, their possible testimony on a bill, and you keep pushing that, and that number grows, of course it's going to raise eyebrows. And hopefully a national bill will be put together.
Now, as far as quote unquote the funding for this effort, it's like you go to Washington D.C. these days, or you turn on your news network of choice, and everybody's crying the poor mouth. How would you see the funding coming? Would you see it through better use of resources, surtaxes? Because the first thing a politician will say is, "This is great, but how do I get to pay for it?" Or he may say to somebody he can pay for it and then run the other way when the issue comes, depending.
There should be no paying for it. You're working for your state, and you're also working on a national level. So it's a simple thing of submitting a bill proposal, making it pass. It's that simple. If you have to pay for everything you want on a political level, then the entire nation is crooked.
Well, yeah, and that's, we could go on for that for days, but yeah.
Plus, how many people who can't afford their prescriptions, they don't have the way to pay for that? Did you know that not only people with epilepsy, but other medical conditions, they have to decide, if I pay for a month's worth of this prescription, I'll have to use it every other day or cut a pill in half just to survive, or they're going to skip purchasing food a few days a week. That's not right.
No, it isn't.
It's ridiculous. And if we can go back a step for a second regarding the filler in any medication, there's no cap on that. So if you go to a gas station and you see how much ethanol is in there, what's being used now is great, but your car had 27% ethanol going into the gas, it's not going to move.
Mm-hmm. It'll look nice and go to no place. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think what you're saying here is so instructive to what people need to do. Now, you figure, if more people are doing this on a national level, then it becomes harder it becomes harder to turn a deaf ear.
Sure. The bottom line is, if you have 3 people complaining that this isn't good, nobody really cares. But the people, if the vast majority of the people in all 50 states start to contact their U.S. Senator, their U.S. House of Representatives, and keep pushing and pushing and pushing for this bill to happen and lower the cost, sooner or later, preferably sooner, something's going to happen. The U.S. Senator that was there explained, I've been trying for this for over 20 years to lower the cost. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. And I tried not to be rude and say, heck yeah, you are doing something wrong. But obviously, as much as he might be trying, not trying hard enough. But let's go back again. I know this being repetitive, but we and other people too do not have paid lobbyists. And I feel lobbyists should be eliminated.
I agree with you. Because it really becomes laws get passed. I had this discussion yesterday with Kathy, and it's is the United States really, instead of a democracy, an oligarchy, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, where it's government by the few, where my money will go to a certain thing, and this is what we're all going to do, whether the rest of the people like it or not. Many people say that's how we got a tax bill in this country. There's enough there to support that.
Absolutely.
There's enough there to support that. Bringing this, as we start to head to our closing, we do have some time. Bringing this to a more local level, I would like for you to talk about this support group approach that you've been doing and how you're organizing it, and what the great results you've had with no no capital weight whatsoever.
Well, for the past 4 years, we've had one support group in Connecticut, but I feel it was time for more, because some organizations that run epilepsy support groups, we've been told by the public it's a nice place to meet, but they're not getting their resources, they're not getting information, there's no guest speakers. There's so many things that people need, especially on a one-on-one basis where you can sit down and help a person. So it's in the past week. It took about a month to put it together, but we now have 4 support groups. And they are in Bristol, Connecticut, Milford, Connecticut, Waterbury, Connecticut, and Stamford, Connecticut. Our hometown, Tony, at the Stamford Government Center.
And you're getting out and doing a few of these things every week, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm doing 3 of them.
Wow.
Milford, the one in Waterbury, and the one in Stamford. Now, granted, the one at Waterbury, when we find a person who we feel has the ability to run it, we will do what we normally do. We'll give basic training, and once we feel they qualify, then he or she could run it. But honestly, right now, for the people that need the help, I don't mind taking my time to do it.
Well, and I mean, you're doing a marvelous work, and the thing is, excuse me, people look at you, and it's like, in just as a model for doing it, but yet there is a lot of capital invested in the nonprofit world, and you're showing a way of doing it where you don't need 5 directors on staff. You just go to the source and get it done.
Thank you. And for all of your listeners, again, even though our focus is epilepsy, if you please go to our website, which is ct-ea.org. Again, that's ct-ea.org. There's over 27 pages there, and we offer a wealth of information. However, if you click on resources, it shows a page for prescriptions. Doesn't matter what medical condition you have, we show a multitude of sources to get a better price on prescriptions. If you can't afford a cell phone, scroll down and find cell phones and get a better price on your cell phone. Basic basic information there under information. How many people do not know enough about Social Security disability, or basically what Social Security does, and Medicare? So we give a complete breakdown explaining what it is, and we have the 4 portions of Medicare, A, B, C, and D. And one of the things about Medicare that everyone should know, when you get Medicare, Part A is automatic. B, C, D, and E, you have to find out if you really need it. Because what's the point of having that set amount removed from your check every month if you're not going to be using it? In case in point, a friend of mine a few years ago when he landed it for his retirement.
Well, Bob, we're getting the signal, and it's time to wind this up. Thanks so much for being here, and we know where to reach you. Thanks again, Dan Ingram.
Thank you, Tony.
Well, was it being let out by Edwin Starr saying, "Stop her on site, SOS. Stop her and tell her I want her to listen to this show." So happy for having our guest, Bobby Fiore, the Connecticut epilepsy advocate, telling us about just all it takes to do advocacy in the healthcare vein in the proper way. And Bobby's an incredible research and an incredible resource. You can reach him at the Connecticut Epilepsy Advocate, ca-ea.org. Yes, that is ct-ea.org. Come to see us next week. Our guest will be Mel Carter. Mel Carter of Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me. He's going to be on these airwaves, so I can't wait for that, and I can't wait for this show to actually be broadcast. So this is Tony D'Angelo signing out in the Comfortably Zone Radio Network. We'll see you again real soon.